so this should be the last part of the UV section here. What we're going to try to do is finish up fitting all of these UVs, and I will show you kind of my methods at doing this, which again are probably pretty poor, but it gets me by and it lets me put some mediocre assets into the City Skylines game. So one thing that we did right before we ended the video was basically unwrap this model, and we used a couple different methods at that, but it was primarily using project from view. I didn't even talk about seams, and that's kind of what I want to do really quickly here. But normally what you would do in a good way, or a good way, is actually take your line and think about how you would break up this model, or where you want edges if you were to unwrap this in a 2D way. Almost think of it again as like a box or a cube you get in the newspaper that they allow you to construct. And so what I use seams for a lot is actually to tell Blender that I want this face to be separate when I unwrap things. So an easy way is doing it how I did it, and just projecting from view and viewing the model around using the pre-done camera angles. But when you get pretty handy with things and using seams, it will be extremely handy. The best advice at this point is just to research and Google how to do that. Again, with Blender and the different ways of modeling, we can make fucking 100 videos about this and never be done. So anyways, back to the unwrap. So one thing that I like to do is set up my unwrapping screen here for placement. And one thing I like to do is click this little arrow button. So if you actually hover over your menu here and you use your mouse wheel, you can scroll and get to the rest of the options. That took me about I don't know, a month to figure out, and a lot of pain in the ass. So anyways, what I'm going to do is click this little arrow and cube button, and what that will do is match up my model to my UV screen. So when I click, let's say I click the face select and I click this face, it will actually highlight the face UV over here. That is extremely handy when you're trying to figure out what the hell you're looking at on your UV screen. So the first thing I want to do, like I said in the last video, is I want to dedicate texture space to what I'm going to see most, or what I'm going to be viewing most in this game, which are the walls and the top of the roof here. These small accents and other pieces can get get tiny space, whereas the door and windows can get a medium-sized space. And these parts will get huge amounts of space, or as much as we can probably dedicate it without sacrificing space on the rest of it. So one of the reasons why I cut this up was so that we can actually use a seamless texture in GIMP or Photoshop, and I can stack these UVs. So one thing I'm going to do up here is I'm actually going to go up to this entire stack and box select it by pressing B and left clicking it, and pressing G and moving this down. Now in your UV editor, all of your same commands for moving shit around works the same. What I'm going to do here though is I'm going to make sure my snapping is on, and I'm going to select each face and I'm going to snap these up to one another. And it's not working, and this is going to be funky because sometimes this doesn't exactly work out how you want it to. So I'm gonna actually change this to vertex and see if that helps. There we go. So that helps big time. And in the UVs, when you box select, you can select every UV behind there. So when you select, you're not having to move one by one. You can just click B, select everything. And I like to do axis movement, just to make sure it's exact. So I'll hit G, X, and then snap that over there. So now my roof will have one seamless texture, so when it gets patterned on here, it might look a little repetitive, but if I'm good with it, it won't look too bad. And we've actually made this a far smaller space on our texture. Instead of having 4 blocks, we now just have one that we can make big. So that's what I'll do now, is I'd like to scale this roof size so that it's a little bigger for us here. And that actually might be too big since we've actually made so many, we've actually stacked this. So I'm going to make it about that size. I have no idea if that's the proper size or how to really do this correctly, but that's just what I'm going to do. I'm going to give myself enough space for the rest of these walls to stack kind of underneath here. So I'm going to box select these, and I'm actually going to move these UVs right under there and leave them as they are because we don't have to move them. And now I'm going to take the fronts and do the exact same thing, and I'm going to kind of keep them close because I figure these are going to have about the same texture as these ones. And since we've got some space here, I'm actually going to blow these up just a little bit. Actually, you know what? I can't do that for these ones. So I'm going to leave these just about the same space they are. And maybe we'll just blow up the window and the doors a little bit to utilize this space. So now, because we've got all these pieces kind of involved here, I'm going to move the big ones out of the way. And I'm going to kind of start stacking these by just kind of literally moving these UVs just right on top of each other. And if you recall, these are going to be our accent pieces. So the detail there isn't going to necessarily be that high, and I don't care at this point if they're going to be stacked and kind of repetitive, because the detail, like I said, it'll be such a small piece of the building, it won't be really a big focus. Do the same thing with these pieces. Again, you can rotate these and it works the exact same way. You can hit the number pad and do the exact same things here. So if your snapping is on, it will mess with things a little bit. And I don't know why this is not rotating for me. I don't know why. We'll just do it manually. Alright, so we'll get the rest of these pieces here. My numpad was off, that's why it wasn't going. Okay. Cool, so now what I'm going to do is, since all of these pieces are about... Oh, I forgot these guys over here too. Let's stack these guys. And this is where you can kind of be like, you know, some people will actually use this opportunity and make these extremely like textured and artful, and you could actually do that. And for this example, like I said, I'm not really trying to do that, but if you really wanted to make these UVs better, you don't have to stack them in this fashion and do them in this way. I'm actually just trying to do this so that we can make it a very simple part of this building here without a lot of extra detail. So anyways, now that I've got all of these pieces, I kind of want to scale these together so that their scale isn't extremely crazy, so that if we have one piece of this, it's not going to look extremely out of place. So again, I'm going to do this by hand, but if I'm going to scale these, I'm going to scale these all about the same size, and maybe just do them together. Scale these down. I kind of want this to just occupy a real small space down here, and then we're going to use the rest for the garage and windows. Alright, so now we have the windows, and I want the orientation to be like that, so I'm going to keep that in mind. And again, I want all of these pieces to be about the same size, so I'm going to scale them down. And I'm going to scale them up again. We got a little more room we can use. Okay. And then when we get to the fine tuning here, we don't have to necessarily scale. It looks like we made enough space there for the window. And this is our garage, and this is, I think this looks like it's out of orientation, so I'm going to actually spin this so it's this way. And now we've got to make a choice. I think I'm going to shrink the window because the window is generally a little less detailed, and the garage is going to have a lot more stuff on it going on, so we're going to make that like that. And we'll scale this door down just a little bit here and fit it right about there. Okay, so now our textures are all, or I'm sorry, our UVs are all ready for textures. So we're going to go ahead and export these UVs and throw them into GIMP. So I'm going to go make sure my mouse is on the UV side and hit A, select everything. I'm going to go over, and if you have to scroll, make sure you scroll over to the left or right and go over to my UVs and go to the very top and go export UV layout. I'm going to hit these back to my desktop, and I'm actually going to just label these like tutorial UVs. Doesn't matter what you label them. I mean, I like to keep myself organized. I suggest doing the same. And again, you can mess around with these things down here. And what I'm actually going to do, we are going to eventually have this texture at 512, but I want to actually make this 1024 so that when we texture, we have a little more space to work with. So I'm going to export the UV layout. And now if we actually go to the desktop here, we'll be able to see our UV layout. And this will be imported directly into GIMP, which I will do now. Alright, so now I've got GIMP open, and what I've done already is loaded this up with several textures we're going to use so to make this a little easier on us. I suggest making sure, again, you go through and you start learning about how to texture and where to find these textures at. There's a lot of great websites out there and places where you can actually hand paint them yourself. I've actually tried to do that on several occasions, and again, poorly, find it very rewarding after doing it, so you might want to try it yourself. So anyways, what I'm going to start doing here is I'm going to start figuring out, we've got the roof and the walls right here. So what we want to do is probably start texturing those first, and then we can fill out the rest here as we go. Let's start with the roof. I've already kind of got a texture rolling out here. I'm going to scroll this up, and it's massive. It's in the same file that I got it in. So I'm actually going to shrink this down so that we can use it. And our base texture that we're going to shrink eventually to 512 is in 1024. But at this point, what we're going to do is we'll do 1024. So we're going to go ahead and scale this down. And I'm actually not going to go through this and teach about GIMP. I hope you guys know how to use Photoshop and GIMP, and so I'm just going to go through this and assume that you guys have Photoshop knowledge. So what we're going to do now is we're going to shrink this even more so that it basically fits over our UVs right here. And I want to shrink it down so that it's good size, like maybe right about there. There we go. And I'm going to turn these UVs off for a quick second so that we can see this. We'll just actually drop this on top, and we're going to duplicate this. Actually, I want to shrink this again. First, I'm going to go make it seamless. I don't know, that kind of messes it up a little bit. I don't like what that does. So what we'll do is just shrink this in half and then duplicate it. And I think it's simple enough texture where we're not going to be too troubled with the look of that. Then we'll merge those together, and so now we've got kind of this like smaller grid to work with. And so I've just duplicated again. I'm going to drag this down, do it again, drag it down, do it again, drag it on down. And again, because we've stack these UVs, we might actually have to do some editing here when we actually get back into Blender, but at this point we're going to see how this works, and hopefully this will stack nice, and we might actually add some grunge here in a minute just to call it a good texture. So I'm going to add a quick layer, and I don't really have a lot of brushes loaded up here, but just going to go with something that I got. I don't even know what this is. We'll see what it is. Turn the opacity down and turn this up. And this is the part where you're going to be probably a lot better. A lot of people are going to be a lot better at this stuff than I am. So please forgive me for my novice mistakes or being kind of an idiot about this. I don't know what I'm doing here. There we go. I just kind of want to make this a little bit more grungier, and since we've added this layer, I can just go ahead and delete the rest of this junk off of here. And again, that's kind of a really quick way to do this, but I don't know. Alright, let's see here. So let me go ahead and delete the extras so that we can crop this down and then merge it together with our original. Now normally I would just keep all of this stuff separated in case I wanted to actually work on it later, but at this point we're just going to go ahead and merge it down. So the next thing is I've already got a brick texture that I wanted to show up here, and so this is kind of already sized, and what I'm going to do is just move this over and just duplicate this a bunch of times over all of the texture. And it doesn't matter if there's gaps in our UVs. What will only display is what is in the boxes. So it's just going to ignore basically everything else. So even if we have a texture there, it doesn't really matter that much. Just I'm going to try to apply this so it's not so uniform, even though you can really start seeing the pattern kind of coming out here. So I did kind of a poor job at seamlessly texture. So. But anyways, I'm just going to cover this whole block, and then what I'm going to also do is duplicate these and move them up here for the top bricks, or the front of our buildings, and then I'll cut the edges off here so that we can not interfere with the rest of the UVs. Okay, so now what we got is this gray stuff for basically the edges and the top sides. And I actually kind of just had a quick idea that maybe it'd be cool to use one of these images that I've already got here. And I'm going to move this to the very front, and maybe we can actually use this piece to kind of simulate that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this in case I want to use other pieces here, and I'll move this to the very bottom. And I'm going to highlight just the top portion of this, kind of like, maybe like right there, and invert that and delete it. Let's get rid of that. And let's see if we can crop. I like to keep things kind of neat, but sometimes with these bigger images it doesn't really work out that way. Got to do all, unless there's another way at doing this that I just don't know of, but it's kind of, I do it the long way, I guess. Cool. So anyways, what I was thinking is we can just flip this. Rotate this and use this piece for this right here. So I mean, you can always do small things like that and kind of think in ways that can use textures in this way, so that, I don't know, it makes it maybe easier on you. You just have to kind of watch out, because sometimes this stuff just, I mean, it's not going to look good if you just slap shit up on there and don't really Photoshop it or actually do anything to make it kind of look good. So again, I hope with this this tutorial, it's not kind of making people think that this is the kind of right way to do stuff. I'm doing things kind of the quick and lazy way, but I hope it just kind of gives you a brunt idea of what I do to do this kind of stuff. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead, and the game likes to make things extremely light, so I like to desaturate stuff and kind of make it a little less saturated. So I'll do that in the same fashion here, and if I was smarter I would have just merged them both so they would have exact the same, but I am not, so we'll just kind of guesstimate. Alright, so now we're going to work on the door, and actually, you know what I'm going to do is clean up my my texture layers here and merge all of our bricks, and that'll make it easier for us to do some normal mapping here in a moment. And then we'll merge these together so that that will be easy to do normal mapping. And so I've got a door already pre-ready to go in a way. It is definitely not the right size, and I don't remember which one of these UVs was our door. Okay, so I need to flip this, and what we'll do is flip this clockwise. I'm actually just going to stretch this out, and again, spend some time and do this properly. Stretching and all this kind of stuff is going to really mess up the detail and the pixel, kind of the pixelation of things. But because this is kind of just a simple door, I kind of feel like I can cheat on this real quick. And what we're going to do here is make this a white window. And while I'm at it, I'm just going to do a quick little touch up here on the shadows here, just so that when we do some normal mapping real quick, this just doesn't fail on us. Let's do it like that. I actually think that's a little too dark, so let's lighten that up. Just like that's a little better. Again, I just want this to be a little more assertive, enunciated when we do the normal mapping. Or make sure that it's really stands out. What we'll do is actually probably a little darker. Let's do a quick little border around here too. That probably will not even be seen in game, but I don't know. Devil's in the details. So the next thing we'll do is add in the window. And so the window, I figured we can use one of these pre-done textures here, and actually am going to bring this back up. And I was thinking about using one of these, but I'm almost thinking about just using the garage door piece here. But I'm actually going to use this. So I'm going to select this and make sure I don't get much brick on there, and I'm actually going to duplicate this so we don't, again, waste it, and invert the selection, delete that, and so now we've got our window already cut out. Okay, and again, I just hate to have all this junk on the outer edges, so I'm going to go ahead and just clean this window up on the layer side of this, and there we go. So the next step here is what I'm going to do is actually, it's kind of tedious, but I'm going to highlight all this and make it white, completely white. I'm going to leave a little bit of the dark edges, and that might kind of jack shit up later for specular mapping or something, but again, for this example, I'm going to go through the real quick and dirty way. Because white will eventually make all of this stuff reflective on the specular map. And if you're not familiar with what specular map is and what texturing is and all this stuff, you're going to need to go ahead and do some research on that first. You can find a lot of tutorials online about it, but the specular is a shine basically, and this game will use a grayscale, grayscale system of applying that shine when you do the windows and a bunch of other stuff. So anyways, so we're going to go ahead and make all of these white. And this looked real bad, so we should probably go ahead. I'm going to use the pencil and just touch this up though. Get rid of some of this like excess window. It looks like, I don't know, it looks kind of much. So we'll just kind of redraw this stuff back in, and this is the time-consuming part of this shit, but I don't know. Sometimes it's worth it. Makes it look a lot better. We'll just leave that. Whatever, however it comes out is how it's going to come out. So anyways, actually I will add a little bit of dark here. Kind of looks like it was lonely. You can do a lot of cool things with like transparency here and layering, so you can make these hollow and then layer on different elements of the window. So I mean, it's basically your imagination that you're limited to when it comes to texturing, and I think that's where a lot of models and modders really shine, and they're guys that really know how to manipulate textures, something that I'm not really a master of, but I hope to get good at it one day. So we're going to rotate this window, or actually we're just going to duplicate this. I apologize. We're going to duplicate this, but I'm going to make sure we're in the right UV screen. So it's actually going to be this guy. So we go here. It's going to be this one, and we're going to move this so that And we did some work for nothing, but we're just going to move this and shrink it down a little bit. So, and again, I tend not to try to do the scaling. I try to make sure that things are scaled as less as possible, and if I even need to hand draw it, I will try to hand draw it, because I found that the artifacts and some things that you get when you try to use these things later just are not worth the effort and the time to try to fix. It becomes a real pain in the butt. So anyways, let's merge these down. Actually, let me make sure opacity is up. Okay, let's merge these back down. That looks kind of funky, but you're not going to really see this edge, so I hope it looks okay in the game. We'll see. Alright, so the last thing is I'm going to use this last piece of this texture here, the same one that we've used multiple parts of, and I'm actually going to take the garage doors and do the same kind of thing that we did here. And I'm going to take these garage doors, invert that, and again I'm going to have to move this over a little bit. OCD, can't leave it. And then we're going to move this up, and hopefully this is a little better sized. Yeah, it's pretty good size for our UVs here. It might be a little awkward. Let's shift down a little bit here. Okay, we'll have to kind of slide a little piece over. So what we'll do here is just kind of duplicate that, and then let's see where that line comes in. Okay. So I think we would be good doing that there, or actually there we go. And then I'm just going to paint over the edge here. Let's cut this off where it needs to be cut. Okay, I'm not going to worry about that. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and go to the pencil tool, and I'm just going to kind of, actually, you know what, better yet, I'm going to clone this, and I'm going to just clone this piece up and down, kind of like up and down, so that we kind of have the same, maybe this actually right here. So I'm going to clone this so it kind of goes up and down right here. Kind of go through, and I don't know how we can really fix this. I guess we'll just leave that how it is, man. See, just kind of want to get rid of some of this, like, I guess I'm using the wrong brush. This is a bad brush to be using. Something like this would give us a little more fuzz. I don't know. We're just going to leave it as it is. So what I like to do when I'm finished with all this is I'm going to go ahead and put a new layer and just make this a black layer, so that we have kind of a nice base to look against. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to export as our diffuse. I'm going to export this to my desktop here. I'm just going to call this tutorial diffuse D. And anytime you make a diffuse, you just want to label it _D like that. And so we'll put that here. The next thing I'm going to work on is going to be our normal mapping. So I'm going to try to go through this really quickly. Actually, you know what? I'm going to have to do the rest of this in our next video, and we'll do the normal mapping, specular mapping, and illumination mapping, I guess. I don't know if I can fit it all. And then we'll try to import the asset in the next video. So anyways, thanks for watching.